Hello and welcome back to the NFL DFS slate breakdown for Monday Night Football, Jets versus Bills. Should be a great game. What we're going to do today is we're going to start off by going through the perfect lineups from the Sunday night game and the Thursday night game. Hopefully that will give us a little bit of an idea, how to attack this game, or just allow us to learn a little bit more about these showdown lineups throughout the season. So hopefully we can get some takedowns. All right. So after going through the perfect lineups, we're going to go through today's slate a little bit, and we'll mainly go through ownership and then the matchup tool to figure out who we should play. So, all right. Before we get into it, make sure to come join us at LionStar. It is only $39.99 per month, and it gets you access to all of our props and all of our DFS stuff, the optimizers, the projections, the tools, everything you need to build winning lineups. All right, now let's get into the fun. Well, put me over there. And perfect lineup time. All right, so we'll just start at the Cowboys and Giants game because that's what is up, and on the DraftKings. So it's going to be hard to learn much from that game last night, except for when one team fully blows out a team like this, it ends up being a 5-1 or a 4-1 if you're on FanDuel. And that's exactly what happened. Cowboys D went nuts, and then you're just using backups pretty much to fill out that lineup. So congrats to the Cowboys, and congrats to the people that did the 4 or 5-1 onslaught stacks like this. Now on the Jets side, on the FanDuel side, very similar, pretty much all the same players. Can't learn much from that. So we'll flip back over to Casey and Detroit. So here is one we can actually start to learn from. So on FanDuel, Mahomes was the captain. I don't like to use the quarterbacks as captains, except for on FanDuel and with rushing quarterbacks. I don't like using quarterbacks that don't rush in the MVP captain spot, even on FanDuel where it is only 0.5 per point per reception. Rushing QBs, that is different. Also, QBs that spread the ball around. And that's what Mahomes did. He rushed decently on Thursday, but he also spread the ball around. Multiple guys got touchdowns. Thus, only Rice is in the perfect lineup, while Mahomes, is at captain. But on the Lions side, you have 2 pass catchers and no Jared Goff. And you do have David Montgomery that got in there. Salary constrictions are part of that. But it is interesting, and it is a thing to remember down the line. You can have 2 pass catchers and no quarterback win, in the perfect lineup. Now let's check out the DraftKings side and see what happened here, and go all the way down. So it is the same thing. However, Jared Goff is in the lineup because we have an extra roster spot here. And it wasn't Rice, it was Blake Bell in the perfect lineup. And also, if you do notice on both sides, we didn't use all the salary. We were quite a ways away on DraftKings with 47,500. So don't be scared to use, or not to use all the salary. Also, try to get a little different. Those are our takeaways from this lineup. Look, Bell was, everybody thought Gray was going to be the tight end. It was Bell. Josh Reynolds was the wide receiver 3, and he is in the perfect lineup. David Montgomery was the lower owned RB of the Lions. Things get weird in these single game slates, and do not be scared to get a little different. So without further ado, let's get into today's slate. We'll go with DraftKings and get on the ownership here and go over it and see what we find out. If I can ever find it. There it is. All right. So look, Aaron Rodgers and Josh Allen, pretty much both the same, both this, similarly owned. I'm going to go to the flex here for ownership because I think it tells a little bit of a better story. 3 of the top 4 ownership guys are Buffalo players. That is an interesting thing for me to point out. The field is thinking Buffalo wins this game and maybe kind of run away with it because both Diggs and Cook are very highly owned, with Wilson being close. So just off that, going a little Jets heavier is an interesting thing because it will get you different. Now, you don't need to go super, you don't need to do the onslaught Cowboys over Giants type lineup, but, maybe an extra Jet isn't a bad idea. That'll get you different. So, lineup wise or ownership wise, we got Diggs, Wilson, Cook, Hardy, who Hardy is expected to be the wide receiver 3 tonight. Now, I think this is very interesting because Dalton Kincaid can roll with the slot a little bit, or Trent Sherfield. Sherfield is another kind of interesting one that could play some slot here, and both Kincaid and Sherfield are way lower owned, so don't be scared to go with one of them. We do not know what's going to happen tonight. We do not know Buffalo's rotations. We do not know the Jets' rotations. We only have ideas. So playing against ownership is not a bad call. All right. And then with Buffalo's running back, James Cook. Everybody believes he is the number 1 and he is going to run away with this job. But that is not something we've really seen Buffalo do for years now. It is more of a 60-40 or 50-50 type time split we've seen with Buffalo. With that, they also have Josh Allen, who is a very big mobile quarterback and takes some touchdown work away. So what I'm saying here is, while I like Cook, I think he is going a little higher owned. And on the other side, Damian Harris may be going too low of owned. There is a very good chance that Damian Harris has more work than people expect. He is a solid runner. He absolutely could get the ball into the end zone. Another thing, we will go over it a little bit later. This Jets D-line is very good. It is going to be hard for the Buffalo running backs to really get going. And let's just go over to the quarterbacks too. We'll talk to them. All right. Both quarterbacks similarly owned. Josh Allen is way more expensive, as he should, because he has that rushing element that, Rodgers at this point of his career just doesn't really have. Now, I do like both guys, and I think both are viable. What I will say is Rodgers is not going to be my captain or MVP. Rodgers likes to, hyper target one guy when he finds a mismatch or he really trusts a guy. And so I would want to use that wide receiver. He also doesn't run, so those rushing touchdowns or rushing yards aren't going to be there. Josh Allen, I would have a captain or MVP because he's going to rush. He could get a rushing touchdown, and that just helps boost quarterbacks so much that I do get it if you want to put him in that spot. On FanDuel, it's going to be very hard for anybody to outscore Josh Allen. How that happens is he does not rush for a touchdown and somebody gets 2 touchdowns. So that is your way that Josh Allen is not the MVP on FanDuel. It is possible. So, you don't have to play him. He will be the highest owned MVP for good reason, but you can get away from that. Just to show the ownership, both kickers and defense are going pretty low owned. Bills have all the ownership defense wise. I don't agree that should be the case. I think the Jets is probably a better defense, and both offenses should be pretty good. One thing though is the Bills will push a little bit more. They try to run a lot more plays. What we've seen from Aaron Rodgers is that's not the offense he runs. He takes his time. And so the Jets offense is going to be a little bit slower than the Bills, it works both ways, right? Like with less plays, there's less chance of turnovers, but also less chances of scoring. So Do with that what you will. Now, let's get into the actual matchup. So we'll start off with Josh Allen, Aaron Rodgers, and the quarterbacks. Versus Buffalo last year, several teams did have decent quarterback scores versus Buffalo. On the other side, the Jets played a lot of good teams and were able to keep guys to pretty low scores. Actually, both teams were able to keep quarterbacks to low scores. Now, Josh Allen was the one guy that was able to get into the 20s versus this team outside of Burrow and Brissett, which was the first 2 weeks. And I don't think that Jets defense really gelled by then. On the Buffalo side, they let a lot more guys get going a little bit more than the Jets. So, I think you should both absolutely think and consider both guys. Just don't expect, a ceiling game from either one of these quarterbacks to get today. All right, running back wise. Dalvin Cook is likely to have the bigger share of the workload than Breece Hall. Breece Hall, working back from injury, may have a limited workload. He is also going to be very low owned, so, you can consider him. I would expect that he has a workload similar to when he started the season. 6 to 8 carries, a few targets, and that's what he's working with versus a fairly good D. Now, on the other side, you got Dalvin Cook, who's likely going to get the most of it and probably has the best matchup as far as all of the running backs in this game. So I do like Dalvin Cook, and I think he's probably going a little bit low owned. On the Buffalo side, James Cook looks to be the RB1. Now, Buffalo has always done a little bit of a time split, and Cook is pretty high owned. I don't mind getting off a little bit and getting some Harris because he could have 30-40% of the workload, similar to Breece Hall, but getting very little ownership and, at single-digit ownership with a guy that has a real shot at a touchdown and is familiar with going against the Buffalo defense. I think it's interesting. So that's where we're at with the running backs. I think Dalvin is absolutely my favorite. I also like Harris. However, with all that being said, the one way you can beat this Jets defense is off dump-offs, and that's exactly what Dalvin Cook was able to do last year. Kenneth Walker got to him. He did it on the ground, though, which is not very kind of surprising with how good this team is. Stevenson had 2 good games against him. He did it mostly through the air. A lot of the times, the guys that do well against the Jets are through the air. That is Cook's forte. Harris is merely a lower-owned dart throw, so do not go crazy with him. But I do think he's an interesting dart throw. Wide receiver land. All right, I think both wide receiver ones have a chance to struggle a little bit. Diggs going against Gardner. Wilson going against White. White is a very good corner. And wide receiver ones had a tough time versus Buffalo last year when he was in the game. That is the one thing that we do need to bring up. When he was out of the game, wide receiver ones had their way with Buffalo. When he's there, he's good. He's there. I think Wilson may struggle a little bit. Diggs going against Sauce might have a hard time. Let's bring up. So last year, 3 for 37 and 5 for 93, no touchdowns. I would expect Diggs to do somewhere in between those, but maybe get a touchdown. He is definitely in consideration. Don't go crazy with him with how high owned he is. Wilson last year, 8 for 92, 6 for 78, did just fine. I don't remember exactly if White was in 1 or 2 of the games or whatnot, but I know White was out for a big portion of this season last year. Wilson's interesting. I do like him a little bit more than Diggs. What I do really like from the wide receivers is the 2 and 3. Lazard, Hardman, I think are both going very low owned, and definitely the spot that you can get to on this Bills D. Rodgers knows Lazard. He trusts Lazard. Lazard came over from Green Bay with him. I think Lazard is in a great spot here. On the other side, I think Gabe Davis is very interesting. We've seen WR2s get off against the Jets. Now, it will be difficult for him, but Davis is a guy that he just needs to get deep once to make the week, and I think it's interesting. You also have Shakar here. You have Hardy, who right now is not slated as our WR3, but is expected to be the WR3. So Hardy is interesting. There's really multiple guys that can take this wide receiver 3 role for the Buffalo. So do not be stuck on Shakar. You got Hardy, you got Sherfield, and then Dalton Kincaid. Kincaid could run some slot. That's kind of the wide receiver, view as a whole. Now let's go into tight end. Dawson Knox is one of my favorite plays on this entire slate. He's going very low owned. Everybody thinks Kincaid is going to play a ton. He's a, exciting rookie. But Knox is the guy that has tried and true and been in this position and been playing tight end for them for years, and a solid tight end. And the Jets, the way you beat them is through the middle, dump offs, throws to the tight ends, slot slants, whatnot. I think Knox is extremely interesting in this game. He could get a touchdown, multiple receptions, and 30, 50, 60 yards, something like that. At his price and ownership, he's very interesting. Buffalo is better versus the tight end, but I think Conklin still needs to be in consideration just because, one, he is actually a solid pass catcher, and Aaron Rodgers is quarterback, so he's getting a huge bump up in his potential production from last year to this year. As you saw, he started off last year pretty solid before fading off into the Jets QB abyss that was last season. We don't have that problem this year. Jets got Rodgers, so I think Conklin is interesting as well. So as a whole, I really like, Rodgers, the QBs. You have to consider both of them. Both of them can and have the ability to produce. I think the wide receiver ones are going probably a little bit over-owned in this game. However, they definitely have the biggest ceiling out of all the wide receivers. I think you really need to consider the 2s and 3s. And then for the running back spot, it's the same thing. I think James Cook may be going a little higher owned. However, the way you beat the Jets is through the dump offs, which Cook is good at. Damian Harris may be going under owned. And then I think Dalvin Cook is probably in the best spot to succeed as running backs. And tight end, I love Knox. I also like Kincaid. He is going lower owned as well. We just don't understand the workload that Kincaid is having. So he has the ability to kind of take that slot role, and that's a very, very meaningful role. But it could be, Hardy, it could be Sherfield, it could be Shakir. All of them could kind of have some roles in this offense. But figuring out that slot role is very, very good on this game, because that slot role is going to be a good one for Buffalo to attack the Jets with. As well as tight end, obviously. So that'll do it. Also, you can absolutely consider both kickers and defense in this game. This game might be a little bit ugly, might be lower scoring, but it also has a wide range of outcomes where both offenses are good and could get it rolling. That'll do it for us today. Thank you for joining us. Please like, comment, and subscribe to our channel. Helps us out a ton, helps us to get these videos out to you. Have a good one, guys. Bye.